All right. Hey, this is Joe with Overwatch. In here we got Evan, and we have Jordan. And this was we just finished our this week's episode, and it was kind of it was a little unique in that I was the
maybe we should start doing this for everyone. Although I don't think everyone's as going to be as interesting as yours.
No, I love hearing you guys' stories. I think they're awesome. I wish that I'd been on like a regular line unit. And got to hear
there are some of the you miss some shenanigans for sure, but that's why you hang out with us, right? Yeah, today we talked with Joe about being an SF soldier, right? Getting into how he first decided to kind of go down that road and going through the selection process, all the bumps and bruises he had to acquire on the way, and how that worked out for him. It was really interesting for me to hear, and even Bob out running the booth said he enjoyed listening to it too. You're so quiet normally. I think we got to crack you open. So, Jordan, you have a good time listening?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I heard a little more on Friday night than Joe.
So you probably hear a little bit once in a while.
No, we've actually never talked about this at work
you guys
before.
Don't really like each other.
Just sit in different offices.
He just needs to sit in his hole and do his work, and then
see slave driver over here.
So I had fun. It was a little different being on this side of it. I guess I get to go out and do things, in town and different news stations and things like that. But sitting there and talking with you guys, it's fun. I think it was good in the fact that one of the things that bothers me is how many misconceptions there are about special operations and, with movies and SEALs and all those things out there, So everybody has their idea of what a special operations soldier is.
Right.
So, but hey, it was a great episode. You'll notice it's just the three of us in here today. The other guys are going to be back kind of sporadically. It's summer vacation time.
Right. Yeah, everyone's.
So that was a little different dynamic. Here, there's a little different dynamic in the room. We want to make sure though that we recognize the folks that are bringing this to us each and every week. These are our annual sponsors for the year, and that's the Bakersfield Real Estate Group, the Linda Benalis crew over there off of Truxton Avenue here in Bakersfield, and they're doing great work trying to help veterans find houses. And then we have the Agape Mortgage crew with Mike and Sherry George at Agape Mortgage. They're doing great work. They're huge supporters of this show, and we really appreciate everything that they do for us. In fact, we're going to have Linda Benalis here on the show here in a couple weeks.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So I enjoyed the show we did with Mike. So I think that'd be cool. Have Linda in here too.
Yeah, they're huge supporters. I just got a phone call from some of these folks, and they're looking to. There was a need for providing school supplies for some veterans that are for their children that are down and out, and just got a phone call right before we started. And, hey, we just want to do that. They're always trying to help veterans and doing things for us, and it's great.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of great people out there in the community to help us get this going and listening too.
Yeah.
Keep on downloading.
So here we are. We got sit back and relax, enjoy this episode, I guess, of me rambling.
This would be a good one to fall asleep to, maybe. Not that it's exciting, but there's a lot less loud outbursts in the middle of it, so it's a little more. You can set your levels to this one.
Yeah, so here's for good audio, and good audio and good timing. So sit back and enjoy the show, and we'll catch you guys next week.
When a new enemy attacked America on the morning of September 11th, 2001, they had unknowingly awoken a sleeping giant.
From all over the nation, men and women left their family and friends, their lives and their home, and answered the call to arms.
They came from north, south, east, and west. They became soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen.
As of today, hundreds of thousands of Americans have served for what is now their nation's longest war.
More and more of them are returning home, fighting new and personal wars on many different fronts.
But they are not alone, and they are not forgotten. Their battles are our battles. And while they fight these battles,
we are their Overwatch.
All right. Hey, how's everybody doing out there? This is Joe with Overwatch in the studio with me today. We got Evan. What's going on?
Yo.
We got Jordan.
Hey, what's up?
People still saying yo? Is that a thing?
It works for me.
I still say it.
Yeah, all right, cool. And he's 24, so it can't be that bad, huh? He knows
still work?
Like, he knows what Snapchat is.
I say
stuff,
it.
So,
You're the young man in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we still have out on vacation still. Chad's still out on vacation doing his thing. Our man Wesley is down in Guatemala doing whatever it is they do in Guatemala. And Julio, we're actually really happy for Julio. He doesn't get to see his children all that often, and he's got them for the entire month of July. So I think they're down today actually in Disney World or something like that. They're having a big, not Disney World, but Disneyland, us being on the West Coast. So they're out having a good time. We're pretty excited for him. They'll all be back in the studio with us here in a couple weeks. So today we just got the three of us. Three's a crowd.
I'm a little worried that we don't have enough Latin blood in the room today.
That we'll be lacking our Latin influence.
Yeah, I'm worried that the energy level might be a little less, amped up. There might be a little less just kind of stuff going on.
I'll have to throw in a caw for Wesley every now and then.
Probably be a lot cleaner though.
So what you're saying is we actually might get some conversation done.
I mean, I don't want to link that per se and lump the whole Latino community in with that type of statement. I mean, you're saying that. You're
Wesley
saying that
and Julio.
Just Wesley. I'm going to go out and say Wesley.
Wesley, yeah. So anyway, we were looking at some things. We were actually looking at Chad's feed the other day, and we something that kind of affects a lot of the guys, especially in this room, and then in Kern County in general, is the University of Phoenix situation. What exactly is what's
Jordan,
going on
give us
over there?
a little from the news desk over there.
Drop some knowledge.
All right, so what Chad posted was a little article saying that the Federal Trade Commission is investigating University of Phoenix for their business and marketing practices.
I've actually heard something like this before with them, and they've been. I'm a graduate. I'm a Phoenix.
You are a Phoenix,
and it's funny because I always feel the need to, and in part because of stories like this that I hear a lot, alarmingly. There is that stigma a little bit, sort of for kind of these online schools, or University of Phoenix isn't even. I did not go online. I went to an actual physical location.
Harvard of the online schools.
Right? It's the Harvard of they call it the Harvard of online schools, but. What was that?
Is that what they call it?
Internship movie? Yeah. But I've heard this before. I've heard one in particular where they were worried. The actual some members of Congress, I think a lot of the ones who were veterans, McCain, maybe Jim Webb or something. Don't quote me on that, but were worried that they were going after veterans specifically because of the money they're able to get, that guaranteed kind of paycheck from the VA when a GI Bill is used there.
Well, I don't think anybody could argue that. I mean, they target veterans.
They target
heavy
veterans,
here,
right? And the people were worried that they're not realistically the education that you get is either not going to be accepted by some other schools if you want to go on for further education. If you want to go on for a master's degree, maybe the accreditation is off regionally, or just simply people worried that the education there, that the standards for graduating or for passing a class are non-existent, And I'd have to say in a way that's true. Personally, when I went there,
speaking as a Phoenix, but I
don't see that as a bad thing. You get out of it what you put into it is the way I took it. I went to. We have California State University, Bakersfield here in Bakersfield, obviously, and I went there for about 2.5 years, and I actually took a break to be involved in the building of my home, and I had gotten burnt out by Cal State Bakersfield because I thought, okay, this is a actual university, and we were doing worksheets and watching movies and doing team projects in these college classes. Huh. And that just frustrated me to no end. I couldn't imagine if I was actually paying money, or my parents were paying money, or I was, racking up student debt. Yeah. How pissed off I would be that was the education they were trying to give me. And I took a class at University of Phoenix. I sat in on one, and before I had officially enrolled, and it was more open discussion. They were trying to get students to think, abstractly and discuss ideas. And I thought that was
Well, I think their main draw aren't most of their professors even online, and then in their the classes they're doing this part time. They're folks that are in the industry of whatever it is.
Most of they're trying to get people who work in the industry for whatever that major might be. Mm-hmm. I was a psych major, so they were all of my teachers were psychologists.
How did you feel about that?
How did I feel about
being a psych major?
How did I feel about it? Yeah. Well, that's a whole other show we can talk about and really explore those feelings. Yeah. But yeah, it's always scary to hear that maybe your degree might not be accepted by the time you go to use it.
Yeah, so I've heard good and bad. You're right. You're actually one of the more intelligent individuals that I know.
Oh, thank you.
And I would say that you're a Phoenix. On the other hand, there are some other individuals that I know, and I find out that they have a degree, and it's from Phoenix, and I know what college was like for myself, and I'm like, whoa, you graduated?
Well, C's get degrees, so
you can definitely fly like a phoenix through your college. You can coast on a hot air vent.
This is why we need video in here.
Yeah. So so that's interesting. One of the things that that worries me is that at least in our area, if you're using the post 9/11 GI Bill, we know that the GI Bill pays for the school. And then, depending on your location, your zip code, you get a BAH,
right,
which is your stipend for living. And so, in our current location, where the school is accredited, or where the regional accreditation or whatever their office is located, it's in a place.
San Jose.
It's in San Jose, so the cost of living there, so it's almost twice what if you went to
Cal State.
If you went to the Cal State or one of the junior colleges.
Well over.
So you have veterans coming back, and they're looking at how they're going to make it financially, and they see, well, one, the amount of work you have to put in, because you're only going to class 4 hours a week.
Yeah, yep. I mean, and you honestly,
and that's one lump sum, right?
You can usually kind of leave at the break. There's it's like one night a week where you go 4 hours. You can go for 2.5. Again, you get out of it what you put into it, but yeah, the money for that's certainly I mean, that's everyone I ever talked to, myself included. I probably would not have gone back because I was so burnt out by the college experience.
So veterans that are wanting to stay financially afloat, so they're coming back, they have families and this or that, and they don't think they're going to be able to work full time or part time and go to a Cal State.
I mean that was
institution.
Like 6 hours a day.
That's why I went. I mean, I came back, was looking at BC and Cal State, and then met a couple Marines, and they told me University of Phoenix gets so much for BH. I was
so they do that. Then is that degree going to be good enough for them to compete in the market?
Yeah, you do. It's worth looking at that short term, long term kind of ratio there. And I mean, you're going to be getting paid. What is it now? It's like it's somewhere around like $22.50 a month.
$29.50.
I graduated way too early.
So that's assuming you're in class all 4 weeks of the month.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
There's
no,
5
weeks,
but if you can miss one.
Yeah.
Right.
So you do have to. I mean, that's for. I mean, you could probably stretch that out over 4 years. I'm guessing you could probably make that do it. But usually you squeeze in a degree there, a little more.
I think my degree plan, it pays for all of like 2 classes. It gets up to like the very end.
All but 2, because it depends, right? You have like 72 months of GI Bill
36
or
36
months or something. Okay, so. But is that going to be worth it at the end of the? You're paying your bills without having to do anything else for that period of time, but then are you going to be able to get a job that's going to pay equal that?
I mean, I still think at the same time you still do have something that most people don't get. You still end up with a degree. Yeah,
in a way it's cool because it's like, hey, it's probably attracting more people to college than they would otherwise. But I guess at the end of the day, the question is always like, is that really college, and is it?
Well, and now I think what we're kind of worried about is if they're under question by Congress, are they going to lose that accreditation?
Right.
And then folks that have spent all this time, are they not then, especially folks that are on the GI Bill, are they not going to be able to transfer those credits over somewhere?
I have heard that if a school was accredited, like when you graduated, that you'll be okay. I think we should look. But
what about the folks that are mid?
But if you haven't graduated yet and you graduate during a period of time when their accreditation is not accepted, then you're shit out of luck.
Yeah. So,
which is a scary thought.
Yeah. So for those of you that are coming and thinking about going to school, I mean that's a serious
It's something to take into consideration for sure.
For sure.
One thing I think about it, they're being investigated because they have a graduation rate of 7.3%.
Of what?
7.3.
What's the average national average amongst residential programs?
It doesn't say the national average here. I'd have to look that up. And with the graduation rate, they have a loan default rate of 19%, which is 5% higher than the national average.
Oh.
And I mean, they've been told to halt veteran enrollments before because they were to prevent violation of the Veterans Affairs 85-15 rule, which requires the programs do not enroll more than 85% of their students as veterans.
Oh, so they were more than 85% of their students were
yeah,
veterans. Wow.
So I mean, at that point, it looks like.
Was it a veteran that started University of Phoenix?
It wouldn't surprise me.
They're owned by there's a guy who this company called the Apollo Group. There's actually an interesting documentary on HBO a number of years ago, and I remember agreeing with one of the points that they kind of played devil's advocate against was this idea. What they used to first go after these type of institutions as, they were like, oh, this is wrong because this is a for-profit college, and I always thought that was ironic, especially when you watch every school, even the state schools, even Cal State Bakersfield, crank up their what am I can't even
veteran recruiting?
No, but not veteran recruiting, but the cost of admission. Gosh, the word is escaping me because a guy went to University of Phoenix, but the cost to go into school every year was getting higher, and the idea that other universities aren't also for profit is a little silly too.
I was thinking about that when I read the article. I mean,
it was what school is not for what college is not for profit in some way, shape, or form, or else they wouldn't have basketball teams and football teams. And
that's all. It's completely
the whole
different
thing now without paying where you're paying student athletes.
I think there's less than 10 schools that operate at a surplus when it comes to
I'm sure
to sporting teams.
Duke, they're all in the SEC probably. But hey, that's a problem for another day. I want to delve right into this because I think we can. The topic today for all the listeners not in the know, our very own Joe is a Special Forces operator, right? Once a Special Forces operator, always a Special Forces. Isn't that
term operator always just sort of? My grandmother was a telephone operator.
Right, yeah.
And so anytime someone uses that, all I think of is my little old lady grandma sitting at the control desk with the headphones on and at the switch. Plugging the wires into the back of that.
The other one wearing the roller. They used to wear roller skates so they could do it faster. Actually.
Oh. Grandma on roller skates.
But something that I thought we kind of thought would be interesting, and Joe does not talk about this. And I remember the first show we had, and we were introducing ourselves, and everyone was going around like 03, 50, blah blah blah, 35, talking their units or whatever the Army units are, like 1054th Airborne Unit and all this. But Joe was just like, I just did some stuff in the Army and I got out, and that's very much how he's always been. I've known Joe for I guess 3 now, or 2 or 3?
3 or 4 years.
I think.
Yeah, 3 years.
4 maybe even. He was a counselor at the Bakersfield Vet Center at the time, and I started as a work study there, and got to know him well. And in a way, I kind of proposed the idea today of talking about the process for him of entering and serving in the Special Forces in the Army, and because I've never really heard about that from him. We've heard here and there a little story about rolling his ankle or breaking your ankle, from in selection process or something like that. But anyways, I wanted to know more about it, and I figured this is a good way to get it out. So I guess we'll get to where you are now at the end. I think that makes sense. But I want to start from the very beginning. Just joining the Army. For you, what was the motivation there? How'd that start out for you? Because you're pre 9/11, right? So
I initially joined in September of '99.
Okay.
And it was really for one reason. I was broke.
Well, I mean, you were if I remember, you weren't 18, right? I mean, you were.
No, we were. I had been married. My wife and I had gotten married in May of '99. We were young, 21, 22. I think I was 21 when I got married.
Me too.
Something like that. Yeah, we just celebrated our 16th anniversary.
Right, I remember I thought we
So-
figured out we were on the same marriage timelines or whatever,
Yeah.
sort of at the same age.
And we had moved up to this place to work at a camp. We were working, camp work, summer camps and youth, and we were wanting to do that for a while, and it just didn't look like, as a young married couple, anybody was going to bring us on. So I was looking. I thought, all right, I started college. I should probably finish it. How am I going to pay for that? And I was working with this guy who was in the National Guard, and he was telling me about all this, all the things he was doing. He told me about basic training. And then it became like, oh, well, this would be a great way to make some money for school. And then he started telling me about all the things that he was doing or that he did during basic training and AIT and all that. And then I started to think, well, that just sounds like it'd be cool.
Right, sounds kind of fun. I mean, because you were like, you said you were working at a camp. You were kind of an outdoorsy guy, right? I mean,
Yeah, we've always been involved.
Yeah,
in
both you and your wife Rachel.
Yeah. So then it kind of became, man, I don't want to be a wuss. I want to go do it so I can say that I did that.
Okay.
And so I actually enlisted in maybe August.
You were in the South at this point, right? Or
No, we were actually up in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
So I enlisted initially in the Michigan National Guard. And then I think the next day after I enlisted, we'd only been married about 4 months. The next day, we found out that my wife was expecting. And then the next week, I broke an ankle playing volleyball. So I was in the National Guard.
Were you wearing short shorts and had your shirt off like Iceman and Maverick? And
I hadn't earned my my dog tags and wife beater yet.
Yeah.
So so I just thought, I got a broken ankle. I can't leave for basic training. I'm in the National Guard. That'll be the end of it. Well, fast forward about 6 months. I never even contacted them again.
So you went in and what? Enlisted?
Yep, I enlisted
in the National Guard.
In the National Guard.
And how does that work? Is that as I know now, and maybe even back then they weren't doing that, but like when I enlisted, I selected my desired MOS basically.
Yeah. So in the National Guard, it works that you find a unit that you want to go to, or at least it did back then.
Where you live, most likely.
Yeah. So there was an MP unit in the town that I lived in.
All right.
So I went down and saw that recruiter, and I enlisted as an MP, and I was going to go back to that unit.
Okay.
So, but that it was also happened to be where our volleyball league was. We played in their armory. And so they had not heard from me in about 6 months. And I just assumed I communicated with the recruiter. Hey, I broke my ankle. I will just, no harm, no foul. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Well, I think it was the company first sergeant was also in that volleyball league. And we were exchanging names. And he goes, Drullard. Why does that name sound? Hey, you're on my list. You haven't showed up for like 6 months. Oh, do I still have to do that? He's like, yeah, you got to do that. So, and actually, I was kind of happy. I'll be honest, there was nothing really going on.
By do that, you mean? I mean, this is before boot camp, right?
This is before boot camp.
So this is like the Poolee program, kind of, or are you?
Yeah, I guess so. In the National Guard, you can actually drill and get paid once a month
before you
even go.
I think it's up to like 2 years now before you can go to.
Really?
Or not before you can go, but that you can go.
Because I was in boot camp with guys who were on reserve option, which I'm sure at the time didn't work out very well. I mean, it was 2002, so I'm sure they just ended up the same place I did. But I just thought that was interesting because I remember the last day of boot camp.
There are people who go
who school, they're like, I'm going home.
Right. I know there are people who go and they're not even MOS qualified or been to boot camp or whatever. Like Joe's saying, they go and
it's just like open.
They have a certain amount of time before they have to.
It's like deciding your major kind of thing.
So fast forward, I said, okay, I'll go. So fast forward a year later, I went to basic training.
So you'd been doing drill, showing up for drill for about a year.
No, so I hadn't even showed up. I didn't even shown up.
Your ass.
Well, he did, and then I showed up, and maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I hear you.
And then so I went off to basic training, and my wife moved back down to Ohio. We were in Michigan at the time. And I don't know, went to basic training AIT. I thought, man, this is a lot of fun. I didn't think there was nothing that was difficult about it. I didn't think. I mean, there was. I was making more money as a private then. than I ever had as a
private with dependents too. Huh?
Yeah, that's right. I got the BAH from the get go.
From the get go.
So I graduated in March of 01 from OSIT, the one station unit training. So we did basic training and AIT as one company, the same company.
Now it was AIT for. Is that, am I correct? Is that
A
advanced
school?
infantry training?
No, that's
Individual.
just your A school, your advanced individual training.
Okay, all right.
MOS school.
Right. Because I was saying as an MP,
Infantry
that
is OSIT.
OSIT.
No,
I thought
OSIT
you
is
just
one station unit training. So it
Yeah,
means you
that's
go
like
to
what they do
basic
for-
training and your MOS school with the same people.
Well, they do that.
all
They
out
do that
this
like infantrymen, tankers, scouts.
I
They
always
all
wondered
do
if that
OSIT.
was like you see like Band of Brothers and they're like in training and then they end up in the unit together and I'm like that's bullshit and maybe that was a World War II thing, I don't know, but so
that is.
No,
But
it
you can do
happens.
basic training and AIT together.
that's
So
pretty
you're
cool.
not actually.
I mean I was in I was in boot with a guy and ended up being at infantry at SOI with him. But
he
based
wasn't
on-
your squad leader.
based on timing. No,
Right.
yeah, he was. It was. We didn't like maintain a dynamic other than being friends the whole time.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you go to that, and then when you're done there, they're like send you home, and you're gonna report for drill the next time.
Yeah,
you
so my
report for
wife
drill.
had moved to Ohio, so I just showed up to Ohio and contacted the Ohio National Guard. Said, "Hey, I just graduated basic training at AIT. Can you give me a company to go to?" And they said, "Sure." So I joined this MP company, and then I immediately started the paperwork. I had enjoyed it so much that I tried to go active duty.
Okay.
So I was trying to go active duty from April of 01 up until 9/11 hit.
Right.
Then 9/11 hit, and we were activated to as MPs down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay.
And
Just to work the base.
yeah, so they took the MPs from there, and they were in like DC and these other places, and so we backfilled and we're providing L&O or law and order
Right.
on Fort Bragg while the real MPs
Right,
were
were-
out doing.
Okay, and this
Doing the
sounds
MP
like
thing.
this sounds like
Doing
this is gonna
real
lead
MP
into
work?
my-
I mean,
Dude,
what is real MP work? I mean,
They were off BFing in Iraq as opposed to BFing in the States.
Well, no, at that point everything was stateside, so they split my company. Half the guys went to airports. We went there, and then the
Gotcha,
MPs
okay.
from Fort Bragg. Nobody had deployed to Afghanistan yet.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then those MPs were in places like DC,
Right, I remember they did
the
have them at,
Pentagon.
like I remember going through like Denver International Airport, and they'd have.
and we did that for 12 months.
Wow. Okay.
And that whole time, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I'm sitting here checking gates, inspecting, and searching all the semi trucks that are coming through on base doing
Right, yeah,
deliveries.
taking the mirror and
Yeah, I
all
mean
that.
everything. If you've never inspected a truck driver's cab, you let's say like we found a live alligator one time, and we found
He's like, well, it's just my pet gator.
Um,
no, don't worry about that.
entire duffel bags of marital aids.
Yeah.
I mean, just everything,
Marital aids.
everything
Like the
you
way
can
you put
think
that.
of.
Yes.
Anyway.
For those of you who aren't from 1954, that means sex toys.
Yes. So, but I was just thinking the whole time, I had got this taste for the military, and I guess
said-
the difficult things of the military.
I don't want you to steal the thunder of each question that I've prepared diligently here, and I feel like
As
there's
I
a
was.
segue. I feel like
As
there's a
I was.
segue coming on. You said you were stationed at Fort Bragg.
Mhm.
Is that where you kind of became exposed to, and decided you wanted to go out for? I mean, I don't know anything about how that process works in the I know it probably works pretty similar. We call it an indoc if you're ever trying
Yeah.
to do anything kind of. But is that where you were exposed first to that kind of?
It
That's
was
out there. That's. I mean, you obviously you saw movies.
So in
and
the
stuff,
Army,
but-
they call Fort Bragg the center of the universe.
Right, yeah.
And it
'cause
really
that's
is.
where all the pretty much all the SF stuff happens.
All the
right?
special operations headquarters,
And airborne schools there, right?
Yeah, you got Delta Force. There's 3rd Special Forces Group. Airborne headquarters is there. 7th Special Forces Group.
Is
all
it a
those-
myth, or is Delta Force called something else officially, like on the building? I had heard that it's like 237th.
They have all kinds of.
like logistics group or some very nondescript name.
That would be a new one to me.
I don't quote me on that actually.
Yeah, depending on who you talk to, everybody calls it. There's the unit. And
Right, yeah, the unit,
There's
yeah.
there's CAG and there's Delta, and Everybody knows them as Delta.
Right, but they're all
that's sort of universal.
Walking around looking cool as shit on the base and everything.
No, I mean, to be quite honest, you would never know who these guys are. Quite
Compared
typically.
to the
my
typical
best
private walk around, I'm sure they look cool.
Well,
they had a lot more cool red stuff on and like green stuff and tabs.
So I was actually trying to leave my guard status.
You're still trying to go active?
I was. I tried to leave my guard status and take a Ranger contract and just go back in as a regular. Go active duty as a private.
Like re-enlist or sort of
enlist as a private and go to a Ranger battalion.
Yeah.
So that didn't work out. Obviously,
they just didn't let you go. Basically,
they just they kind of strung me along. Said they're gonna let me out, and then no, we're gonna keep you.
Yeah.
So I lived at the time. I was living in Hardy Hall, which is a hotel there on Fort Bragg. And the schoolhouse was literally 100 or 200 meters away from that hotel, the Special Forces schoolhouse.
Schoolhouse being a place for just classroom work?
Yeah, so they have like language school and
gotcha.
your MOS schools and things like that there. And so
I never know, though, with like these kind of Special Force stuff, schoolhouse is just some like euphemistic term.
Oh, I know. It's all
a place
spooky,
where, like, crazy killing happens.
Yeah.
Or
No, it was actually a school.
But it was where they did like the
it's
class work for.
Yeah, it was the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so the recruiter station for Special Forces was right there. So I was kind of mad.
On the base? Like within
right
the base?
There. Within.
But that was a recruiting station for, at the time they weren't doing this whole thing where you can like enlist as a, they have a thing now, don't they? A program where you can kind of enlist.
Yeah, an 18 X-ray program.
Right, that they'll just send you up into that program, kind of pump you
yes.
through that
No,
program.
this was, they were recruiting active duty military.
Right, okay, cool.
Active duty Army.
Which makes sense, I think.
Right. And so I was kind of mad. I just got my 4187, which was my request. It was denied, so I was really ticked. So I walked down to the SF recruiter. I knew nothing about it except I saw these guys walking around.
Right.
And I asked the recruiter. I watched the video. The hua hua video of shows you all these things,
spy rigging and rolling up on beaches and shit.
And I said, who can stop me from going to selection? And at the time, I think he said my first 07 in my chain of command.
Right.
Well, I'm thinking National Guard 07.
Some guy back in Ohio.
And I knew him. I had met him before, and he actually had a long tab. He had a Special Force tab.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, hey, that's great. I was there on active orders.
You guys have said that before. Long tab, is that simply because it's longer to fit in the word Special Forces?
Yes.
It is Ranger.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And it goes above a Ranger one, right?
It does.
Okay.
So I think the order of precedence is by the length of school.
Isn't there is there a third one?
There's a Sapper tab that's authorized now as well. Yeah. And then the airborne tab, it's not a tab, it's a unit.
Yeah, it's a unit
part
identifier.
of the unit patch. Yeah.
Okay.
So
sorry, I digress.
Yeah. So I walked down there and said, hey, who can...
right. Like, I want to do this. Who do I have to...
If I fill out the packet, who can stop it?
Right.
And they said, well, 07. And so in my mind, like, well, he's not going to stop
so
it.
far
What does he care if a
yeah.
private goes to selection, of one of his thousands of...
Right.
And so that's sort of how it began.
And so you put in that packet, and no one stopped it. No 07 reached down and picked up the phone.
Right before I was about to leave for selection, I got my redeployment orders back to Ohio, so I couldn't go.
So the first time you try to get into this program, more or less, you turn down right before you enter it.
Yep.
So like you basically got accepted, but
I went down, passed the PT test, did
right.
all the preliminary stuff, and then we got our redeployment orders. So those orders were for me while I was on active duty. They were no longer good. So,
okay. So walk us through that. So you get it doesn't work out. You have to go back and do the guard at airports thing again for a little while or whatever. How long did that last before when you finally got in? That's the next.
So that was 02. When we left there, I learned that in the state of Ohio there are I think 5 active Special Forces groups, and there are 2 reserve or National Guard Special Force groups, and one of those they had a company in the city I was going to be living in Ohio.
Okay.
So I called them up. I said, hey, I already have orders for selection. Any way I can go, and you guys take me on as a a trainee or whatever.
Right.
And they said no. So I showed up there, and then within there they have their own little selection, sort of an order of merit list, a bunch of guys in the National Guard that are trying to earn spots to go to selection.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they pass selection and pass the Q course, they can come back to that company. And so I entered their process, and then I think 6 months later I went to selection.
So you really did have to kind of chase this down. I mean, this wasn't. You were hungry at the point. By the point you got to it. I mean,
yeah, hey,
like,
all the movies were
this
coming out. Black Hawk Down was out. You hear about all these things happening in Afghanistan. It was, on the news. You're watching these guys on horses and big beards running around. You're thinking all this stuff's going on. You want to be a part of it,
right?
So yeah, it was motivating.
So you're an MP, right?
Yep.
In order to get where you, and we'll go all the way through the process, but I mean, do you have to become do you have to go, okay, now I'm a Ranger, okay, now I'm a Green Beret, now I'm a this, I mean, do you have to walk through each one, or can you kind of jump, I mean?
No, so to go to selection,
right, let's start there.
They will allow any MOS.
Tell us for the listeners out there like myself who are not familiar with the process, specifically for the Army or whatever, selection, break that down Barney style.
So selection is, I guess, short for SFA, Special Forces Accession and Selection Process.
Okay. So it's
so
a
it is
weeding out phase.
So when when people watch the movies and
right.
they see people training and doing all those things, and they're lifting logs and they're
That's
doing rifle
buds,
PT,
right?
and there are plenty of logs at selection.
Okay, cool.
So that's what they think of. So it's
Wesley would have made a joke out of that. See?
Yeah. So enter Wesley's voice.
Yeah.
So
logs.
so that's a 3-week process, and I went there. It was in I think June of 2003, and they have a pretty cool obstacle course there called the Nasty Nick. And while I was doing the obstacle course, I fell off and broke my other ankle.
Jeez.
So that ended that.
So first time at selection,
I was a no-go.
Fall off a tower of some kind and break your...
Yeah, so they have it's an obstacle they call the Whopper. So you climb this rope, like typical ropes you climb.
Uh-huh.
And then when you get to the top of that rope, though, instead of coming down, you have to climb off the rope and on top of the log that the rope was tied to.
Gotcha.
And then you walk across the log. So anyway,
that sounds like
it had
something
just
a lot of people
rained.
fall off of.
Right.
We'll blame it on the rain. It had just rained.
Blame it on the rain.
I won't lie. I was pretty smoked.
Yeah.
I fell off, and broke my ankle. Got sent home, and so I had to come back and do it again.
So how long do you have to wait between? What was your recovery period there? 6 months again? I mean, is that your...
Well, literally 6 months to time of selection, but because I was in the National Guard, my readiness NCO got me you were talking about the 18 X-ray slot. He knew I had gotten hurt, and so that's a school. They do a preparation course for guys coming straight off the street before they go to selection.
Okay.
But they have to go to airborne school first. So he said, hey, I got you an airborne slot, and I got you a SOP-C slot. Do you want it to help get you back in shape? So I literally came out of my cast, and 2 weeks later I went to airborne school, and then I went to that special operations pre-course, and then to selection again in January.
Okay, right on. That helped, do you think, for the second time, and when you got to selection the next time?
Actually, it sucked. That was was the worst thing. But yeah, by the time I got to selection the second time, I had been there before.
Right. So a little bit of that kind of anxiety was gone, probably.
Yeah, one of the things about selection is it's just sort of a mind game.
Right.
They don't yell at you. It's not like basic training. It's not like Ranger School where they're yelling at you, trying to motivate you and do all these things. It's really, they just let you self-destruct. So they don't tell you anything. You never know how you're doing. So a lot of guys just quit for that reason. Like, man, I'm sucking. I don't know how I'm doing.
So they're getting no feedback whatsoever. You
no
don't know
feedback.
if you're passing or failing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I did that in January of 2004, and then immediately started the Q course in February.
All right, so now Q course. Break
Q
that
course.
down for us.
Qualification course.
Okay, so you've passed selection. They've weeded out the less worthy or whatever we want to say, or enough people have fallen off logs or whatever. And you're gone to qualification course. So in qualification course, what exactly are you qualifying for?
Yeah, so if you get selected, then they give you orders to go to a qualification course to qualify as a Special Forces soldier in one of 4 MOSs.
Okay.
Enlisted MOSs.
Is the point of that to kind of find out which one you're more apt to do? Or?
No, you take a lot of aptitude tests while you're actually at selection.
Okay.
So you get to pick one of the 4, and then ultimately they choose for you, and then you go through that course.
So you kind of do a little bit of everything, or they've chosen already by the time you get there?
Yes.
Okay.
So you show up.
After those tests and all that.
So they break you up into different companies based on, at least when I was there, they broke you up different companies based on what MOS you were going to be going through for the next year.
Okay, and those 4 are?
So you have the 18 Bravo, which is a weapons sergeant. So they're proficient in, actually those guys are
pretty
really
much anything they'll have to encounter, right?
anything that you have to shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are impressive. You know, after I was on a team and I worked with some of those guys, you know, weapons I'd never even heard of before. These guys could tear them apart,
right.
rebuild them. I mean, just amazing. 18 Charlie, which is a demolition.
Okay.
Right, engineer is the engineer sergeant. You have the 18 Delta, which is the medical sergeant.
Okay.
And then the 18 Echo, which is the communications commo, which is what the one I ended up in.
Okay.
So
it's pretty much like one of those video games. You get to pick which one of those guys you want to be.
yeah, I think there was a
pretty
video
much
game.
Rex, the explosives expert.
Yeah.
Or, Okay, so right on. So you go to qualification Q course. You qualify. What is that one more classroom or like hands-on with this for you with this comm?
So they change it up all the time. One of the things I do appreciate about Special Forces is they're constantly adapting to whatever the operational environment is.
Okay.
So kind of the order of things changes, but you do a series of things. So they're bringing guys together from multiple MOSs with multiple different skill levels. You have a lot of Rangers that come through there, a lot of infantry guys, but then you have cooks and medics and mechanics and all the that end up there. So they have these tactical phases that they put you through. And so I would equate, now I haven't been to Ranger School, so I'm just going off of the guys that I worked with that had gone to Ranger School. But they put you through a tactical phase that is, I think it's about 5 weeks long, that's comparable to Ranger School, at least in the learning, not in the length of time that it takes you to go through that phase. But I lost, in those 5 weeks, like I lost 25, 30 pounds. I mean, it was significant. You're in the field. You know, you're learning like basic infantry tactics.
Right.
You know, for the guys that don't, you're patrolling. You're learning weapon systems, things like that.
Snap drills and stuff.
Yeah. And then they put you through your actual MOS phase to learn. So if you're a commo guy, you have to go learn all the commo systems.
Are you going to like a specialized? I mean, is that its own, or do they send you to like comm school like they would someone?
So they have their own. They do everything in house. They have all prior special
I imagine
forces.
It's like the TTPs and just the SOPs are specialized. It always struck me that like one of the things that I liked about anything that I did, you know, as a Marine, we did some missions with, I know one like a Delta team or one of those, I don't know what the hell they were, but, and then a few even like recon units and stuff, but everything was very efficient, and like some of the kind of bullshit that you think of from a larger unit was thrown out the door just because it's like it's not worth it. It doesn't take, it's a waste of time, you know, those kind of things. So that makes sense with the way they would do the training sort of.
You know, one of the benefits, and you talk about efficiency, is one of the reasons that is you don't have any privates on, you know, no lower enlisted. The lowest ranking.
Now, how's that work for someone who goes in through this like 18 X-ray program?
Well, if an 18 X-ray comes in off the street, by time they hit the
through so many schools,
by time they hit their team, they've been in for 2.5 to 3 years already.
You can pick up E5. Well, I guess it's a smaller.
Yeah. So they get automatically picked up.
Right.
Yeah.
They get picked up pretty quick.
Yeah. I want to say the real Army. I'm going to say the regular Army. You can hit E5 in 2 years if you hit all the time requirements. I mean,
especially in the infantry. Yeah,
we can't even do that with time requirements, time and grade, and time and service. I mean, maybe. If you're Audie Murphy or something.
Well, the Marine Corps promotes slower anyway,
Yeah.
just because of the numbers. I mean, you only have 50,000,
Yeah.
something like that. So
Okay, so after Q course, I mean, let's talk about this. When did they introduce when's all the high speed stuff coming in? I mean, is that when you get back to your unit? How are you going to another
that's
school
when they film the
after?
movies.
That's the stuff I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, when are you
Yeah,
when are you strapping on crazy weird gear and M4s with
I would say the Q course, that really, all the Q course is the bill payer to get to a team.
Okay.
To be able to, you learn your basic things in the Q course.
Right.
When you leave the Q course, you're intelligent enough to learn a foreign language. You're intelligent enough to learn all the other things that are required of that MOS.
Right.
And
you sort of have
and
a
you're
framework of
teachable. And you're teachable. You catch on quickly.
Okay.
So you get to a team, and then they train you up based on what the mission set of that team is.
Okay.
So you have different you have Halo teams and scuba teams and all those types of things, and then it's all mission specific. I don't know the people ask me all the time, well, special force, like they have, because they see movies and they watch all the SEAL propaganda and all that kind of stuff, and so they want to know what it is. But really, a special forces team is a group of guys that is really proficient at a lot of simple things, and because of the rank structure, they don't typically have to deal with behavioral problems. They don't have to deal with, it's like being an AP class in high school. You get to learn and do things because you're not dealing with all the other junk.
Right. Yeah. I think I was just reading a thing. General Stanley, I think McChrystal, who just stepped down. He was SOCOM director or something like that, I think.
Yeah, he was in charge when Pat Tillman died.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Bad mark on his record, I suppose. But he's, I guess, got an autobiography or something going on, and there was a little story on Yahoo. He was being interviewed, and he said one of the things he thought people, in particular, he was talking about the SEALs, but I imagine it applies. He was saying that people, he said he was using words like Olympian, endurance. People think that's what it is, but really what it's about is like people who work as a team so well together that it's almost telepathic for them. He was talking about the in particular that event where, again, SEALs, sorry Joe, that Maersk, Alabama ship, 3 SEALs took 3 shots at the same time on the Somali pirates, and like he said, literally, I mean, they fired at the same time without really, just because they all knew that was the optimum time, due to the list of the ship or the rise of the waves and whatever, and they didn't really have to communicate it. Yeah. You're saying that's really what separates a lot of these smaller team-based special units, is that the communication is like telepathic almost, just they don't really have to. Yeah,
I would say, some of that is when so if you're in the infantry, you're in a team with 3 other guys, 2 or 3 other guys.
I can say, yeah, for me in particular, I got a bit of that. I mean, obviously, I had some lower denominators.
Right, so you understand those 2 or 3 other guys really well.
I was in charge of a cat. Humvee with 4 guys in it. So yeah, I knew those 4 guys very well.
And you guys could operate fairly efficiently.
We could predict each other.
But then your tempo got changed all the time, because then you're having to listen to a squad leader, who's then listening to a team, a platoon sergeant. And so with a team, you get so if you have an A team, you have a handful of guys, and they're together all the time.
Right.
And so you just learn each other better. Personalities,
right?
And then nothing can substitute for just the amount of training and rehearsal that goes into a mission, especially a specific mission. SEALs, and they get a lot of credit. It's a different mission set.
But no, I think we had talked
about
that
before. That's not what you said Friday.
What's that?
I said that's not what you said Friday.
Yeah, sleep, eat, and lift. Right. That's what SEAL stands for, really.
We had
sleep,
talked
eat,
about
and lift.
that before, though. Like some of and it's true. And I had witnessed it even with. Well, to be honest, I'm with some of your peers, but the intelligence that they get is a lot different. The preparation, I mean, you have like set up mock buildings. I mean,
Sure.
From what we know of the Bin Laden raid, like they've set up basically the compound, like a cardboard or plywood version of it. They kind of knew.
Yeah, and that would be typical, like SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force. I mean, they're specifically direct action teams.
They had some time.
Fed
they had,
the intel
months to prepare for it and everything. And like we did a mission, and we were just on just outward cordon. We were nothing involved, but these guys were clearing a house, and they had pictures that they had taken from like the day before. Because as a vehicle commander, I got this in the briefing, the pictures of the house. Like, here's the entryways. Here's this is a 3-foot high wall you're gonna have to get over. Sure. And I'd never say, well, they don't give us that kind of stuff, because it's not really worth it on the scale, cost, and all that. And I think that's something that a lot of people probably don't put into consideration when they. I think a lot of people do think, it's just this superhuman group of people.
Yeah, the reality is, especially when you go on those direct action, high profile things that, everybody's going to be staring at, every asset in the world gets thrown there. Right. So you have human intelligence, you have technological intelligence, all types of imagery, things like that. Everybody watching, I'm sure for the Bin Laden raid, there was no expense spared.
Right. Yeah.
They
had 4 things on their night vision goggles, man. they had wide lens, parallax view night vision goggles.
But the Special Forces mission is, our bread and butter is unconventional warfare.
Right. Yeah.
So we would pride ourselves more on being in a hostile area and working with indigenous people and teaching and training them and taking them out to do missions.
No, that's kind of like, that was kind of the Green Beret. That's
Joe's actually reading from the fact sheet.
All right. Well, you got it up. Is that what it says?
Yes.
We'll get. I do want to get into kind of. I know probably a lot of it you can't give specifics about and things like that, but I do want to kind of hear about your, combat experience as with the teams, but also. What were you have been called exactly? So when you're all said and done through Q course, you join a team. Like what, because you hear people say, "Oh, he's Delta," or "He's Green Beret," or whatever. Right. I mean, what can you tell? What?
Yeah. So if you graduate through the Special Force Qualification course, you are actually a Special Forces soldier.
Okay.
The problem is everybody calls everything within the Special Operations community Special Forces. You hear it on the news all the time. Special Forces take down. I look on there and I'm like, well, that's a bunch of Navy. They're not Special Forces. There's really only one Special Force. That's the Army Special Forces. And then you have the Special Operations community. Right, yeah. And so we are Special Forces, and we have that moniker, the Green Berets, because we wear a Green Beret.
Okay.
Funny thing, though, is historically Green Berets hated to be called Green Berets because back in the day, anyone that was in an SF unit wore the beret as part of the uniform. And so the 18 series guys, the actual Special Force Qualification guys, they wouldn't even wear their Green Berets because all the support personnel, and then even if you had like females up at group, would be wearing the Green Beret. And so to them, it was it was almost dishonorable. It was disrespectful for them. Well, then later they changed.
When
they became a branch.
Berets, right? Or
no, it was before then. They branched in the 80s or 90s, something like that. And they actually, there was an 18 series branch, like an MOS branch.
Isn't there like a tan one now too? Or?
Yeah, that belongs to Ranger Regiment.
Okay, Rangers.
And so, so if you ask younger guys now, it's Green Beret, and sometimes it's just easier to say Green Beret,
right.
as cheesy as it sounds, rather than I was Special Forces. Oh, hey, my nephew's Special Forces too. He's in the 82nd Airborne or whatever. All these things. You're like, because any type of special thing they hear.
Right, well, I think that's the thing too, and I know a lot of Marines take particular. And Marines take offense to fucking everything, but
it's true.
But I think we get offended when we hear Rangers lumped into Special Forces.
So they would be a Special Operations. They're part of the Special Operations Command.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. But again, so there's the confusion. There's only one Special Forces. That's the U.S. Army Special Force. It's a branch of the Army. So
okay. So now that we've cleared all that up. You just need to wear your Green Beret more often. That way, people just know.
I only wear it at home with my Ranger panties.
Yeah, none at all, right? So you've done it. You made it. You're back with a team. Are you still National Guard at this point, but you're National Guard.
I was National Guard for my first deployment, and then when
but you're at one of these teams that's one of these active reserve kind of units.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I went active duty.
They activated you when you deployed, or
yes, I just left the National Guard, went active duty.
Like your UEAS or whatever from or ETS from National, and just kind of what we call it cross deck. You just
yep.
Okay.
Went to one of the active duty groups.
So now you're in a team, an active duty team, you're deploying now, and you're working in theater as this new, high speed, low drag guy. What's you hadn't deployed previously, right? I mean,
I did. I deployed with the 19th Group. The National Guard did a tour to Iraq with them. It was a great trip. Learned a lot. And
you never did. It was before deployments, pretty much. You said you didn't, like, as an MP, you never deployed or anything. So you didn't really get an experience as like you don't have the difference between like a regular Army deployment and then a team deployment. Right. But I mean, I'm sure you're a smart guy and observant and kind of. I mean, tell us a little bit about that and how you think maybe that experience for you differed from most of our listeners probably who might have deployed.
Well, I think one of the big differences is teams are typically isolated. They're either out on their own to where they're the only or one of very few Americans around. So anytime you're away from the flagpole, so to speak, think life's just better.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You have
less eyes on you. So
right.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it the other day. What you said your lowest guy on deployment was an E6.
Yeah. So the lowest guy on the team's an E6.
Right, but he's Bob, right? We guys every time we worked with him, they were just going by first name or chief. Maybe they would say something like that, which I don't know how there was a chief in the mix. So.
Yeah. Again, it just sort of due to the I don't know, the low numbers, the tight group.
Right, yeah.
Typically, everybody's
I think
they get along really well.
It saves. I told my guys too. I was like, just call me Morgan or something. Like if we're under fire, you don't have to add an extra, 2 consonants to your sentence.
Right.
Like, okay. So you're kind of.
So I've had deployments where we were out and we were the only ones around, and there wasn't another American for another 40 miles.
Yeah.
And then I've had deployments where.
But how many guys? We're talking like. Just how many guys I'm guessing you're occupying a small little compound building or a little one of their a hut with a gate around it kind of thing. You have are we talking like 30 guys or are we talking like 5 guys just isolated 40 miles away from everyone?
Between 5 and 30.
Okay, so it kind of fluctuated.
Yeah. So it all just depended. So we were probably in the teens, low teens. And then I've had deployments where we were part of a bigger FOB, where we just had our own little compound on the FOB.
That's how it was where I was in Al-Qaeda. Yeah, the guys were
and so
in the farthest corner possible.
Much better if you can be out on your own.
Yeah,
because everybody that's on the FOB, I don't know, you have people running around that aren't really doing anything.
Do you feel like you're more effective? I mean, only not based regionally, but based on the fact that you were separated so far from the FOB, do you feel like you were more effective as a team that time around? I mean, were you able to operate more effectively kind of when you were autonomous like that than you were?
Well, the beauty of that is you didn't have to deconflict battle space. We were the battle space.
Right, so you knew.
If there
who Blue Force was and all that.
Yeah. And, that's probably the biggest benefit. And then you get to know... So we get to know the locals.
Need to open up with the minigun on top of the Humvee or whatever. You're a free fire zone.
A minigun on a Humvee is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You've showed pictures.
So, you're not deconflicting battle space. You get to know the locals more because you're the only Americans they're dealing with.
Right, kind of trying to open up channels of communication, find out where AQ is.
Yeah, humans are always the best source of information.
I don't know. I found sometimes they got a little the tribal
the best
thing,
and the worst.
The tribal
the
thing
best
I feel
and the
like
worst.
is big at play. Like I don't like that guy, so they'd be like, "Hey, my neighbor? He's got a lot of stuff over there." And they're hoping like maybe they'll kill him when they go into his house and before they find out he has nothing there.
That's straight from Borat.
So
number 1 prostitute in the whole country. So you're in Afghanistan. Or Iraq. I mean, both.
Both, yeah.
Both.
I've been to both.
What first? Which came first? Which came?
Iraq was first, and then I did a couple to Afghanistan.
Whereabouts in Iraq were you?
Iraq, we were south of Baghdad, east of Kalsu. So actually, Wesley and I were in Iraq at the same time, about 40 miles from each other.
Oh, cool. I was in there somewhere then, too.
You were actually pretty close, or where you said you were in Najaf. It's pretty close to where he was.
I was, yeah, but I would have been in Najaf and everywhere pretty much at the start of the invasion. We went up from Kuwait, Baghdad, and then back down to Najaf and stayed there for a while. But yeah, did you guys? I mean, were you pretty firm in that location while you're there? I always think of you guys like, and again, we'll get into this about kind of. We're about to get to that, how people get confused about maybe what exactly happens. You know, we see this portrayal in media, movie and television especially. But I mean, are you guys flying around on helos going from one place to another where the commander needs you, or are you kind of staying put?
No, we're sort of autonomous.
So you can kind of form relationships.
We have a spot, and we develop all of our own intelligence and work that spot. Yeah, I would say our air assets in Iraq were a lot better than they were in Afghanistan. So if we did a direct action mission, then 90% of the time we flew in and just landed on, I don't know, the roof or the yard of the guy that we were going after,
right?
Or the guys. And then Afghanistan was different. You had to drive and you had to.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. What do you got? Again, like I said. My brother does something kind of secretive as well, and it's not any fun to have conversations with him on the phone because you have to. You can't.
It is
there's
funny
some stuff that's going on, and
there's obviously TTPs and some operational trade secrets that you don't want to give away. But
right.
What I found is, and this being a radio show, I'm probably just not going to blab it, but I found that when guys say, "Hey, I just can't tell you what I did," then they're usually lying.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Most anybody,
Yeah, right. I mean, we all know that.
You can't get specifics sometimes, but that's just life. I would say this about my time. I guess one of the things I was thinking you were going to ask. I can say this about my time.
Oh, I'm not done. I still have questions, but
in
please.
Group. Of all the things that I got to do, the coolest thing that I got to do was meet the guys that I worked with.
Was meet the guys you worked with?
Yeah, be around, some real high-speed individuals.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like after 9/11, you had patriotism flowing out of the fingers of people.
Just unicorns shooting American flags out of their butts.
Yeah, and I worked with guys that left Wall Street. They wanted to do something more than the average individual.
Right.
I met lawyers. I worked with doctors. I think, there's a National Geographic special about a guy that was literally a rocket scientist and left and went and became, and especially in 19th Group, you had guys that had these normal jobs. They're real smart individuals.
Yeah.
And then they did this on the side for fun. So, that was probably the best thing, was just meeting and hearing. I was always the nug. I always felt like the dumbest guy in the room.
Okay, yeah.
And
that is saying something. I would say that it kind of leads into and I think I've had the notion for a while. I'm sure most people who have any kind of idea would agree. But I was going to ask sort of what if anything you could put your finger on, kind of a unifying character trait that separates the people who end up in special operations across the board. I always thought it would have been intelligence, but not specifically, like you say, not just because someone's a rocket scientist, but more of a abstract thought kind of thing. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, could you think of one? Obviously, if it may be more than one, if you need to, you have some time.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I would say, in my experience, there's two categories of people. There's a category of people that can. So maybe three categories.
Okay.
A category of people that can and will. A category of people that just can't. And then folks that they just don't know if they can. And the people that I had the pleasure of working with, they all could.
Can and will. People.
They can and will.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
They'd figure it out.
Right. Yes.
And they'd get it done.
Yeah, that's kind of, I'm trying to figure out what the word is for that, but yeah, like an intelligence,
grit,
and adaptability to it as well, like mental acuity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to spice this up a little bit, and we've kind of touched on it before, but let's end the show on some funny notes. We want to talk about some of your favorite or least favorite portrayals of, and I don't care if it's Navy SEALs, whatever, just special operations community in movies, TV shows, whatever it is. Just what are some of what grinds your gears about that? What do you want to clear up, or what do you love the most? I mean, we just start with Hurt Locker. Was that we're just going to start with Hurt Locker kind of thing? I mean, that's not really a depiction of special forces per se, but I know.
Well, I guess it depends on what branch you're in. I mean, EOD is considered special operations, and they're in the special operations community, not considered special operations.
Ours are not, but they always think they are, and we get a lot of
that's what I always.
EOD,
I
remember seeing those guys, and they'd be wearing non-issued plate carriers, they were just all rigged up and
right. Well, I mean, I wore non-issued
optics on their guns,
so,
but it's I was trying to tell my brother had a conversation with a guy who was a Navy EOD, and he said he's a good guy, and I'm disarming bombs is a little nuts, right? But I was trying to explain to him most of the time the EOD guys that I knew, it's not like they were sneaking in Ricky Recon into a position. They were the first guys and only guys on scene, and they were disarming. Most of the time, I can say as our unit, we would come up on artillery and throw a grenade down, and then we'd be like, okay, EOD will come back up with the rest of the unit and finish this off, so to speak. So it was always and in Hurt Locker, why I'm getting on EOD guys is I always hated that all of a sudden they start pulling up, they're getting sniper fire from that little hut, and and it's like a long shot with a Barrett 50 cal. And they're on one guy's running at one point, and he takes him down. And these operators, these private military contractor guys are all getting taken out. And then let's see, he just leaves the fob and goes running through the city with his camo pants and boots on and a hoodie, thinking he's not going to
I never saw it.
You never saw it?
I never saw Hurt
Locker. I've never seen the
I
whole
don't watch
thing.
a lot of the newer military movies. They bug me.
They bug you because of right.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't know. They're starting to do a better job accuracy wise, and I think, and recently I've seen with Lone Survivor and the American Sniper, a lot of emphasis on the experience and how it affects people and camaraderie and those kind of things.
So
which I've enjoyed.
I watched one the other day. It's kind of out there. It's military, but I'm going to say they got a lot better with the uniforms. The uniforms look correct. Uniforms look right.
I hear you. Yeah,
but
sometimes that's way.
But they put them in the wrong place. So you had the new multi-cam uniforms in Iraq. It was just all right, uniforms right, placement is a little wrong.
It was anachronistic.
It was actually what's it called? Just watched it. I'm trying to.
I know there was a show I never
Monsters Dark Continent.
Okay, see, Monsters was a great movie. It was the first Monsters movie and had nothing to do with the military.
See, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, and it was an independent film, but it was an interesting idea. And then I saw that on Netflix the other day, too, and I was like, I'm not even going to watch that shit.
I know one of my buddies posted a long time ago, or posted something on Facebook about it, and it was actually, he had said it was pretty accurate to, being over there, minus the monsters.
Minus the monsters. Minus the giant kaiju that are taking over Iraq, apparently.
Right. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say kaiju's a good likeness,
that's
even though different movie.
No, actually,
the first monsters? Okay.
Kaiju is I learned this too, is since Godzilla, it's a genre. Kaiju is a genre, and they have these giant, basically these giant monsters.
Got it.
It goes back to God. What's that guy who wrote the book? Names are all avoiding me, but there's it's kind of an old archetype of these giant monsters who are the ancient ones, and they come up from under the earth. But yeah, I like that. It's pretty accurate without the giant monsters. No, uniforms is one that always bugs me, man. You always see just stuff, and it sticks in my side every time I'm trying to watch a movie.
Huh. Yeah,
I've heard that sometimes.
I don't know. You go watch something simple as Terminator with Wesley and Julio and a bunch of other vets, and all they can talk about is, that's not accurate. They shot a 203 and exploded it a foot and a half, and then all you hear for the next hour is Wesley talking about, that's not really what happens with that.
Exactly. I think that you have to. It is hard when you've done that job, and I imagine it's hard for like a race car driver to watch a race car movie, something like that, and be like, Days of Thunder is totally full of crap. But you do have to be able to separate. I mean, come on, remember it's a movie. I've heard though, getting back to the uniform thing, that, and this could be a myth, that they are actually like not allowed to get the uniforms 100% correct.
Yeah, I've heard that too as far as movies. I don't know if it's accurate.
I couldn't tell you if it's accurate or not.
It couldn't be that difficult to look online now.
Yeah, everything's online.
Like it could be very slight. Like I'd heard this, like Full Metal Jacket, like the EGAs, the Eagle Globe and Anchor that he wears, the drill instructor wears on who he was actually a Marine, Arlie Ermy, wears on his collar are the anchors facing the wrong way. So like it was something like no one really would notice, but then it's something to do with like licensing from the department. I don't know. That could be complete BS. We need to be better about researching things online. But Joe, I think you've been trying to research while I've been just jibber jabbering. So
no, actually, I think my email got hacked, and so I was trying to reset my password real quick.
They did let
go. Is that what that email I got was from you?
All of our health and information has been stolen by the Chinese. So
yeah. So anyway.
So all of a sudden it's Joe Loves Boys.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you got an email from me about Dropbox, it wasn't from me. Don't open it.
Man.
Thanks for that.
I'm always worried. You can see one in the description is obviously you can tell this is like a hack because it's like your aunt is sending you some ad for a porn website. You're like, I'm not even going to open it because if I open it, I feel like it's Pandora's box.
We'll see. This email isn't that bad from him. I know we're a lot of talking now, but it just says find the PDF copy. It says Dropbox, and we use a lot of Google Drive to share work stuff. Yeah. So I'm sitting over here trying to figure out. Well, I just gave my password for Gmail. Thank you, Joe, because I was figuring that was a.
It wasn't me.
The whole thing's crashing down around us now.
Luckily, I just gave him the work email's password, but
yeah.
Actually, you back on the movie topic. You know what bugs me the most about all the movies is their use of suppressors or silent, quote unquote, silencers in movies and things like that. My favorite scene of all special we were talking last night about special operations movies and things like that, and favorite scenes. My favorite scene, because of how ridiculous it is in Tears of the Sun. So who's that? Bruce Willis. So they're walking through the village, right? And they have that SOCOM 45.
He's got the HK Mark 23.
It's the H&K SOCOM 45.
Yeah.
And so I've had that weapon.
Yeah, I saw the picture of it. I was excited to see that. Yeah.
Well,
and 45 is a subsonic round already, so it is one of the better ones to suppress. But
sure, but
it's not.
It's a big gun.
Yeah.
And so they're walking through
7-inch gun. I think.
And as they're walking through these little huts and these villages, and they're putting on the suppressor to the.
They're threading it onto the barrel.
They're threading on the barrel, and then you hear.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, and they're shooting. Well, if you have that gun in itself, it's like 12 inches long.
With the suppressor on it, yes.
No, without the suppressor.
No, I think it's like a 7-inch from the hammer to the end of the threaded barrel. It's a giant.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so if you added that, when you add that suppressor, you might as well have an M4, like a shorty M4. And so I don't know, just that scene of they're tiptoeing in.
Yeah, I love that because I actually just watched that the other night because it'd been a while.
Yeah.
And the movie itself is entertaining, but they do like bound tactically and stuff like that. So it's a little bit, at least they put some effort into it. But I love that part because I think it's a lot of the guys, you got the snipers are taking guys out, right? But then Bruce Willis has a suppressed M4 slung over his shoulder and opt to use the sidearm instead for no clear purpose whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah. Well, sounds like we're running out of steam, so I think we might as well end on that note. I learned a little bit today that I didn't know, and this was a good venue for me to feel open to asking you questions and get you to actually talk about it.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I do get, I guess I get asked often.
Right.
Be quite honest, and maybe it shouldn't be. I don't talk about it a lot because not because I'm embarrassed but there's so many stolen valor guys out there.
Right, yeah, you don't want to be one of those guys, yeah.
I meet at least one a week. I was this, I was that, and I don't know. It is what it is. I had a great time doing what I did. I have got to do lots of cool things, meet lots of cool people.
I would vouch for you too. That most of the guys I know are very humble. The real guys are very humble about it.
Yeah.
They understand that they serve a specific task, and it's not like
Yeah.
They're the
and we're really not better than anyone else.
right.
We just
It's different.
I think they're different. Maybe had a few more resources. We learned that we can.
Right.
And we did.
Any not to be one of these guys, but any advice for any young kids, motivated kids, thinking about trying to go that route? I mean, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I would just say that either you can or you can't, and either determine that you can and you do what it takes to make it happen.
Start pushing yourself.
Or and not that false motivation, like it's like, look, either you can go walk that 20 miles or you can't.
Yeah.
So
right.
you're either going to do it or you're not.
Yeah.
Don't decide at mile 15 that you're not.
Mental toughness, people. Mental toughness. All right. Well, I guess I'll sign it out. This is Evan for the Overwatch guys, for Joe, for Jordan. In spirit, Chad Man, Wesley down there in Guatemala, and Julio with his girls. Signing out.